Another free mower put out as trash. This one is a Craftsman M140. It's only 4.5 years old. It's got a Honda engine. Pull cord's broken, as you can see, so that's where we're going to start. These nuts are 10 millimeter. First thing I'm going to do is spray some WD-40 down into that hole onto the spring to see if that'll free it up. All right, that is helping because that's all the cord that's out now. Let me put this back on. I think we're good. Could be a little bit tighter, but to see if this will run, that'll work. See if it's got some oil, and yes it does, right at the full mark. See if we got any fuel, and we do not. Fuel tank is bone dry. Now the air filter, I've seen better, but I've seen worse also. Let's try some starting fluid in the carburetor, see if it'll turn over. I think we got us a good mower. I'm going to take the tank off, clean it out, take the carburetor off, clean that out as well. These bolts are 10 millimeter. That vacuum line fits right here. Got a spring right here. We need to disconnect that. Also this linkage, but let's get the fuel line first. Now we can turn the carburetor to the side to get it loose from that linkage. Now we can work on getting the gas tank out. Gas tank's actually built into this top piece. Fuel line's got to come off also. The gap between the ignition coil and the flywheel, that is good. I can get this recipe card in between. That's about the thickness of a business card. The brake on the flywheel, however, is in the off position. You can see I can spin the flywheel, and that's how it would be if the engine's running, if you have the kill switch, the handle depressed. So this is stuck. Should be like that. So that probably just needs some lubricant, some WD-40. Now with the fuel tank, I'm going to put my finger over the outlet where the fuel line would connect. I'm going to pour some raw gas into the tank. We'll see if there was anything in the tank, any kind of dirt or trash. It actually looks like it's pretty clean. Moving on to the carburetor, before I take it apart, I want to knock off all this dust and dirt that's on the outside, and also hit the outside with some carb spray. We want to take this bowl off first. There's a 10 millimeter nut down at the bottom. Another gasket just fell off the other side. Sometimes these nuts can be on very tight. Probably be some gas leaking out. Yeah, you can tell by the color how dirty it is in that bowl. That needs to be cleaned out. Here's the float. We want to take that out, so this pin will slide. Then the float will come out, and the needle valve should be on the float. Oop, just fell off. Here's the needle valve, and it actually looks pretty clean. Right down in the center of that tube, you can see a slot for a flathead screwdriver. That is the main jet. That's where the gasoline passes through. And very often the main jet gets clogged up. And a clogged main jet is what causes a lot of people to give up on their mowers. Put them out by the curb, throw them away, take them to the dump. There should be a hole right through the middle of that. And we do see some light right through the middle, but let's compare that to the size of the hole after I clean this out. And I'm going to clean it out with a piece of wire and also carb spray. So first the wire, run it all the way through. Now the carb spray. Look at how wide the hole is now. So here's the before, and here's the after. So it was partially clogged up. It's much clearer now. Now there's one more thing up in here that we need to get out and clean. That's the emulsion tube, and you can see the top of it right there, that little piece of brass sticking up. So I'm going to take a screwdriver and push down on that. So I'm going to set it down so I can get more leverage, and it does not want to budge. Hold on. Let me try that again. There we go. Did you hear it pop? That's what we wanted. There's a hole through this also that we can clean out with the wire, and there are also holes through the side. See how the wire goes through? So I'm going to run this wire through all those holes and also hit this with carb spray. Now we can move on to the carburetor itself. This is where the fuel line comes in. Some of that is rust. Much better. Now let's get this all put back together. So the emulsion tube goes in first with that longer skinny end going in, and then the main jet. That gets screwed down tight, and the needle valve goes on the float just like that, and that slides over that centerpiece, and the needle valve goes down into that hole, and now the pin through that plastic piece and out through the other side just like that. Now the bowl back on, and the 10mm nut. And then also the 2 gaskets will go on when I install the carburetor back on the mower. But for now, I'm going to clean the body of the mower. Got to run some brake clean through the fuel line, make sure there's no water in there. Spark plug, let's get that out and clean it up. I will hit it with some sandpaper and brake clean. Got it cleaned up, also check the gap. It should be 0.03, and that's right where it's at. Little WD-40 in the boot. And one thing that happened when I pulled that boot off, this piece fell off, which goes right there, and that's held on by the 2 bolts that go through the carburetor. So because those bolts go through so many things, it's going to be a little bit tricky getting that carburetor back on. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Those bolts go through the air filter housing, and this gasket goes on, and the carburetor. And on the top of the carburetor, you have to hook the linkage and the spring for the automatic choke, I believe. So you got to hook those up somehow. Then this gasket goes on. And that piece that fell off. All of that is held together and held onto the engine by those 2 bolts. So that's going to be a little tricky. So I guess I'm going to hook the linkage and the spring up first. And the linkage goes in the second hole, not the one on the edge. That's for the spring. So turn it to the side and twist it around there. Got needle nose pliers for the spring. That might be easier. Put the bolts through, the gasket on, run those bolts through the carburetor, put on the second gasket on the back. Now this piece, try to line everything up. Still have the vacuum line to do, but I can do that last. That should be it. And now the vacuum line on the back. There we go. Right here on the flywheel, those rusty spots, that is where the magnet is. I have no idea if this is necessary or if it does any good, but I don't think it's going to do any harm. Now a little bit of WD-40. And the brake on the flywheel, I'll put a little WD-40 on the cable. Now this top piece back on with the fuel tank and the fuel line hooked back up and the clamp back on the fuel line. Now the air filter, let's get it down, get it out in the yard, put some fuel in it, and see if it'll fire up. I bet it will. All right, that fuel line going to the carburetor, I forgot about that, so I just hooked that up. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't run, so let's see how it does. All right, that runs well. RPMs seem a little bit low, but it runs nice and steady. I don't know if you can adjust the RPMs on a Honda engine. I've never had one before, but I'll work on that. But it runs well. Happy with it. Can't beat the price. The pull cord, though, the pull cord's loose. I know I tried the quick fix early on with the WD-40, and it did work well enough to start it, but let me see if I can do a better job on that. I did fix the recoil the right way. You can see it's nice and tight now, but that would have added about 6 minutes to this video, so I made a separate video out of that, and I'll put a link up here in the top left of that video. As for this mower is only 4.5 years old, so that style of Honda carburetor should be current and good information for you if you have a newer mower that you want to work on, or an older one if it has that same style. So hope this helps you out. Thanks for watching.